Good evening, people of the web. This is Jason Wydrow, your host of OnlineStrategyPodcast.com. So I am continuing the Webmaster series covering Google guidelines, content guidelines, and that would be your website content and all topics related to your search engine optimization. In other words, what are you doing or what are you not doing that you should be doing, or what are you doing that you shouldn't be doing, and adhering to Google's carefully laid out quality guidelines. So on the last podcast, I went over the first main subtopics, covered those, but in this specific podcast, I'm going to cover the subject of actual site content, and specifically content that is automatically generated or self-generated, meaning someone actually is typing it up and adding it to the website or blog or what have you. So there's a few really important things to think about when putting content on your website. If you've been on the web for a while and you've owned a website for some years or some time, or you've done some research, you've probably determined that there are different tools and different softwares and different things you can use to automatically generate content for your website. Now, there was a time and there was a hope that the more content you had on the website, the more it might show up higher in the Google search engine when people are searching relevant search phrases, related to your product or service. There's an idea, the more content you have, the abundance of content, even though so much of it might be almost duplicate content and just random content. So basically, the guidelines are pretty clear on this, and the first major thing is to think about where your content's coming from. If you are scraping content from other websites automatically or copying it and putting it on your website, actually copy and putting it on your website, or automatically scraping content and pulling it into your website to make it look like your site has new information, or it's basically, it looks like you're having constantly fresh public information. That is one of the major points that can be frowned upon greatly. And you can probably see why, because it violates kind of a natural law of original content, or, well thought out content, for example, and it might somehow even become inapplicable content if that content being pulled in isn't monitored properly. So you've got a duplicate content problem, you've got scraping content from other websites problem, and you got the possibility that it could be not associated with your content somehow by error or some other method. So on that specific point, it's best to add content yourself, make it original, and add it, relative to the content of your site, not continuously duplicating information. Now, there's another continual thing that can occur where you have an Atom or an RSS feed where that content is being scraped and pulled into your website, pulling in threads from other RSS feeds and data, trying to, again, populate your site with data and content that's relevant to yours. Now, not necessarily that this is always bad or that it's irrelevant, but it's not original content. And generally, it's duplicate content because the content already exists somewhere else. Now, there's some other ways to actually generate content, and they're more mathematical and more a little more involved, but they could also be done through an application or a program or some type of, website service that generates, content for your website. Again, this is not original content. This is being generated by a machine, a computer. Therefore, the quality can suffer. The duplicate possibilities can greatly increase, and all kinds of other foreseeable things can go wrong, relying on mathematical programs that determine, basically writing content for your website more or less based on other content and other generated content. So those are the primary areas where, when it comes to content generation, where problems can cause problems for your website and potential problems with the ranking of your website, and how the Google search engine actually views it as being a valuable website. So, and you have to think again, if you listen to some of the earlier tutorials, you will know that I covered quite a bit of this stuff already. But again, each one of these in this Google Guidelines series is specifically dedicated to and going into detail about a specific guideline. And in this one, again, it's content, generated content, and specifically programmatically generated content, again, by an online service of some kind, by some program that's pulling in data, creating essays and reports and data on a website, whatever it could be doing, anything that would be classified under automatically generated and not, original and handwritten. So this one is pretty straightforward. It's not very involved, but if you, think outside the box a little bit on this, you can kind of see why, a website with more original content, well thought up original content that was written naturally can be so much more valuable, and particularly when it's not duplicate content or, very similar to other existing content out there. So there's a liability of all that to happen when you obviously take out the, the man hands of someone actually writing that out. So that's pretty much it for tonight's podcast. And again, I am going through the Google Webmaster Guidelines and basically taking each major step in the process of, reviewing your site, considering your website, looking at it in detail, what it is that you're doing and not what it is that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing, or what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing that you should be doing, all different ways. I probably made that a lot more confusing than needed to be, but you get the point. So it's important to make a note of this, but careful review of your website, page by page, detail by detail, really looking at the organization of the content, the structure of the content, the relativity of the content, how relative is that content to each main page. For example, on your services page, are you going to have all kinds of content about some disrelated subject? Likely not. That wouldn't make very much sense. So the idea is, just to have really clean, flowing, simple, and related content on the pages. That's all I'm going to do tonight. It's a short episode. It's a Saturday night. I wanted to get this done. But hopefully that answers some questions for you, though, in relation to how your content and site information is generated and what to consider now for the future when you want to add content to the site or find ways to get new content. Thanks a lot for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you tomorrow.